The North Stirling district on Western Australia's south coast has been farmed since the 1950s and 60s, when much of the land was cleared. By the early 80s, soil salinity and wind erosion were threatening farming activities. Over the past 2 to 3 decades, farmers like Kim Oliver have been addressing the issue by planting large areas of their farms to perennial pastures. This has led to a lowering of the water table and a substantial increase in farm production.
My name's Kim Oliver, farm with my wife Kate and son Luke. The farm's about 45 km southeast of Tambalup in the Lake Tilbury area. It's about 3,600 hectares, of which 2,500's cleared. We're mixed farming operation, have about 1,000 hectares of crop, running about 3,300 breeding ewes. They mainly graze perennial pastures, of which we've got about 300 hectares of Lucerne and 600 to 700 hectares of saltbush in a mix of tall wetgrass, puccinellia, kikuyu and a few others thrown in there. So with the Lucerne and the chicory mix, we generally rotate around the cropping land. It usually stays in for about 4 or 5 years into that perennial mix, and then goes back into crop for a similar period of time, sort of 4 or 5 years again. And so we try and rotate that sort of system around the cropping areas. Whereas in the saltbush areas, we found that a mix of species will grow on different soil types, whether it being salt or deep sand or whatever. That way you're sort of covering all bases, and it's not constantly grazed, not like the annual pastures. We found that by growing the Lucerne and the chicory on the cropping country, we're halting the spread of the salt on those paddocks. So our aim is to lower as much of the water table over the whole scale of the farm, and that's hence why we rotate the Lucerne around. Whereas the more permanent perennials generally will lamb the ewes into the saltbush, and then possibly, if they recover enough from when the ewes are in there, we'll wean some lambs into there as well. For the economics of it, I think it's a no-brainer. We've just had 35 mil of rain for February, and the amount of growth that we've got off the Lucerne, we're able to fatten lambs and that sort of stuff. And we're finding that in the saltbush areas, that lambing the ewes into there, that we're getting about sort of around the 10% extra lambs off those ewes. So it's a win-win as far as I'm concerned.
The North Stirling farming properties are unique, with perennial covered paddocks dotted with lakes that hold the salt and hypersaline water. With the water table only metres below the surface, rotational cropping, combined with sowing large areas to salt-tolerant perennials, is now part of Kim's farming system.
Well, with the salinity, it became most visible after the 82 floods. I think because there's so much water laying around, it just filled up the water table to extremes that we couldn't use it in our normal farming systems. So hence the start of planting of trees and perennials and that sort of stuff to try and lower that water table again. Yeah, having perennials on our farm, it's now part of how we farm. I really don't think I could go back to just relying on annual pastures and all that sort of stuff. Our feed bills would be twice as high, and it's a no-brainer with any summer rain and the perennials. You use that water that lands, and we've got to a system now that we can establish with the air seeder that I'm leaning on. If it doesn't grow going through this air seeder, it won't grow. So it's got to be simple.
Having perennials in the farming system is providing a mix of stock feed, preventing soil erosion and keeping the water table at bay. Kim and his son Luke, who has grown up with this system, have seen the benefits over the years and know perennials will continue to be a core component of the farm in the years to come.
With the future of perennials in our system, I think they'll definitely be a strong part of the farm. Or my aim would be hopefully to almost do away with annual pastures if we can. That might be a bit of a challenge, but yeah, I certainly would like to see the whole farm, other than what we're cropping, planted to perennials. Yeah, Luke might have a say in that. He might have a slightly different idea, but I think he's seen the benefits of the perennials in the system, and yeah, I think they'll be here to stay and be a big part of the system.